Hi, people online. I wanted to talk a little bit, just kind of rant and ramble a bit. I was on Facebook, doom scrolling, uh, but there was this like ad for this device for people who have PTSD, and it's basically it looks like an inhaler kind of, but I guess it does something, gives you it allows you to like breathe. Maybe it like times it for you or something. And I was going through the comments, and there was this one guy, just you could tell he was like just constantly angry is what it seemed like. And he said he had PTSD from combat, and that he just was going off. This one guy was like, it's not forever, and the veteran with PTSD was like calling him all kinds of names, and he's like, you don't know what it's like, blah blah blah, and it really made me sad to see someone. I'm sorry, I'm gonna cry. So shut up, you're crying. But it just made me really sad to see someone so lost in their own pain and suffering that like they just clearly didn't want to accept that it was possible to overcome this because they were so stuck on how much they were suffering from it. And it really hurts me because I know how hard it is to suffer from PTSD. What it's like to have flashbacks, what it is like to have panic attacks and feel like you are constantly in fight or flight mode. And so like it made me really sad, and I wanted to let people know that PTSD is not a lifelong sentence. I am living proof, and so are other humans. Granted, I was never in combat, but I was living with PTSD for a very long time because of abuse. And it got so bad that the only point where I actually sought help was when I couldn't do anything other than tremble and hyperventilate and throw up and just cry all the time. And I know how bad it can get, and it really hurts my heart to think about other people in those kinds of scenarios. And it hurts even more to think that they think it's impossible to leave. Because it's not. I kind of mentioned offhand in another video that I'd posted, but I was recently reevaluated for PTSD by my current therapist, which I was only officially diagnosed with around like 2020 or 2025 when I started going to therapy. Well, I got diagnosed by my psychiatrist when I started taking psychiatric medicines, which I no longer take. And I believe it's everyone's choice. It should be everyone's individual choice whether or not they take psychiatric medicines, considering the experimental nature of most of them. We don't know long-term effects on the brain's chemistry when we take these pharmaceuticals for extended times, the way I personally use and view pharmaceuticals for myself and my family they are what you use in a pinch, when you don't have the skill to work through the other mental issues that are plaguing you. They help you get out of crisis, and they help you until you find a way to reach baseline another way. They're like the parachute that you pull when you're jumping out of an aircraft or something, and you need it until you can get to the ground, but everyone is different, and I do believe that some mental health issues come from biological conditions that do need daily chemical intervention, right? It's all case by case too, but for PTSD specifically, which is not something anyone is born with, it's a condition that develops from trauma. I do think that I know that it's possible to get yourself out of those severe symptoms. Now, I don't like the concept of saying I cured PTSD or my PTSD is cured. It's not cured, but I have negated the symptoms and that I've had from all this underlying issue of trauma. I've negated the symptoms to where they are no longer so exacerbated that they reach criteria for being diagnosed with PTSD. I have not had a flashback in over a year. I don't really have panic attacks anymore. Sometimes they have, but like very few and far between, my trauma doesn't control my life anymore. And that's the point I've gotten to. And so I kind of too was thinking, I just had this like mind's eye image that appeared, and it was like this pulse, and like made me think of, with my physical condition, MCAS, how it was brought on by a long COVID infection, a trauma of sorts, a physical, biological trauma, though. The way that it hit my immune system and flared it, and now I have this syndrome where my immune system is super touchy, like very reactive, overly so, and I feel like PTSD is kind of like that. It's like when a trauma hits you so hard that you're like fight or flight, uh, parasympathetic, oh no, sympathetic nervous system, one of the two. Uh, One of those sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous systems activates so hardcore, like a hardcore infection like COVID, that it causes this residual, like long COVID, like my MCAS, um, not mine. Ugh. Like mast cell activation syndrome, rather. I don't claim that as mine. I think that perhaps there is some kind of way to recalibrate these systems. If I could do it with PTSD, and I think it works similarly to my immune system infection, except it was in my a system in my head that's neurological and tied to emotions and stuff. So we think it's not scientific because it has emotions, but emotions come from somewhere in the brain, right? That makes them biological, um, rather than just theoretical, or conceptual. They're biological too in nature. But so yeah, I just kind of wanted to share a little bit of that like mind's eye image that I had, like this, where it's such a shock, it throws the whole system off. And so it's got these weird, wonky bits afterwards. But I do think that a recalibration, a reset of sorts, or maybe not a reset, because I don't know, I didn't really reset my mind per se. It was a slow integration of fixing the little bits and pieces that were off, finding new ways to calibrate myself to it. Perhaps that's what it's going to be like with mast cell activation syndrome. I mean, I kind of am already doing that, but with like vitamin supplements and stuff, just kind of like introducing different things to make my body's immune system respond differently without going full pharmaceutical route. um, so yeah, I just kind of wanted to rant a little bit. The main point of this, though, is that PTSD is not something you are stuck with forever if you have that diagnosis, and I really want people to understand that. Sorry about crying earlier. It hits home really hard, because I know what it's like feeling that, like, things will never get better, that, like, kind of desperation, and then that, like, that stubborn resistance to just automatically reject and not even listen to people saying it can get better because you're so stuck in the suffering. Like, I really get it, and that's why I feel really sad for this fucking random stranger on Facebook in the comments section of a goddamn ad. Which is stupid, but, I really hope that that individual finds peace, and I made a little comment reply talking about my own experience with PTSD and how I no longer meet diagnostic criteria. It doesn't mean that I'm perfectly fine anymore, but I don't have PTSD anymore. I do still struggle with depression. I do still struggle with anxiety and fatigue and frustrations and all these normal human emotions as well, that I feel like PTSD is not like a disease you get. It's a collection of symptoms as a reaction to severe trauma. And that's not permanent. Um, I know it feels that way when you're in it, but it's not. And you can be mad about me saying that, or you can accept it and start your path working towards lessening the severity. A lot of things helped me. That device, like that device that the ad was for, breath work was really, really crucial to everything. It really interacts with that fight or flight system in your brain and body. It is kind of a reset, actually. But Your whole life doesn't reset. Your trauma doesn't reset. But you can reset that crisis emotional response in yourself through things like breath work or grounding techniques or sensory stimulation, any of the five senses really. And it's going to be different for everyone, because one of the first coping skills that my first therapist tried to teach me, it didn't do shit for me. I'm not gonna lie. It was some kind of visualization, and like when I was in crisis, I just couldn't calm down and get my mind's eye to work. I couldn't visualize anything. When I closed my eyes during panic attacks, it would lead to flashbacks and being cut off from reality. And so for me, specifically, what I had to do was when I was in a like panic attack, to keep myself from going into like a flashback, I used a couple different grounding techniques. One grounding technique I really like is the 5-4-3-2-1 method. So first you say out loud. You have to say it out loud because it gets you involved in your body, right? A grounding technique is meant to pull you from the trauma reaction happening outside your body, kind of in your mind, into like your physical reality of like, I'm here and now. So 5 things I could feel. I would say it out loud. 4 things that I could hear. Oh, no. What was it? 5 things I could see. Sorry. 5 things I could see. 4 things I could hear. 3 things I could touch. 2 things I could smell, and 1 thing I could taste. And it got all my 5 senses. By the time I would get to smell and taste, which were really freaking hard for me to like just, think about and call out, because they're not necessarily the senses I use the most. I would be shifted mentally, in a different mindset. And so, it derailed the, trauma response, I guess. And then another one too was the rainbow technique. I find something that's red, then I find something orange. The Roy G. Biv rainbow, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. By the time you get to blue, indigo, violet, you're like, what's the difference between indigo and violet? And you're not even thinking about what you're upset about. But you have to really focus on those grounding techniques. Another one too, for like sensory stimulation, you start with your toes and you work up to your feet, ankles, lower leg, knees, the upper leg, then your hips and butt, and then your back, your lower back, and then and you wiggle your whole body. But I count 5 seconds for each body part or more, or less if you're new to it. When I started off with it was 3 seconds for each, and I moved my way up to 5 and then eventually 10, and that was a really big help to me. Oh, and 2, so I guess I'll finish it. After you do your shoulders and you go out your arms and then your fingertips, and then you do your neck and then your face, which is like, by the time you get to that one, that's the last part, the face. You stretch it out, wiggle it around, you just feel goofy, and it's a little bit of even humor to add into saving yourself from a flashback or panic attack. And I find that is my saving grace a lot. But yeah, there's going to be different techniques that work for different people. Some people take in senses differently, especially like different kinds of neurodivergencies. Like, maybe you just have to find what coping skills will work for you to talk you down off the edge of mental catastrophe, much like we do with kids. Redirecting that energy and focusing on something else kind of like makes the emotional symptom wane. And so, yeah, I rambled a bunch, sorry guys, but PTSD is not a life sentence. Short and simple. Recovery is possible from PTSD, and I just want to keep putting that out into the world so people know it. I'm not a therapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever, but I'm a person who was diagnosed with PTSD and is no longer diagnosed with PTSD. And I know I'm not the only one, so it's possible. It's not easy, but it's possible. Much love to everyone out there, and I hope we all continue to heal from all the things that plague us. Bye.